All right. Now we want to give some time to Lisie and to Suzanne, who's going to take us on an update of the governance task force and their activities. So, ladies, it's all yours.
Um, I'm going to let Suzanne do most of the nitty gritty talking about what we've been doing, but I just wanted to frame it. And the first slide really, or the first piece of this really frames it, which is that, the charge of this task force was to reimagine and optimize the board's governance. And I think that, when you hear Barack talk about the exciting plans and moving the association forward and how it's going to be changing, in order to ensure his success, we need to ensure that the board governs effectively, and not just now, but really looking at where we want to be, like in 2030. Where is it that we want to go? And we are going to be required to make some governance changes to really have this new iteration of JCC be successful. And so this process is really meant to just put the structures in place to help the association move forward as quickly as it can. And with that, I'm going to turn it over and let Suzanne give you all the details to what we've been up to.
Okay, great. I think we can go straight to the next slide because we've already talked about that. So really, this has been so far a really great experience in terms of our task force and how we work together. We've been fluid, transparent, and responsive. We've used research and best practices, and been very intentional in modeling those best practices and good governance in our own process. And here's how it's worked in practice. We've presented a draft, we get feedback from the task force, we go back, we incorporate that feedback, we go back to the group for discussion, review, and ultimately approval, and then move on to the next step. And then we've also engaged, as we mentioned back in May, two subcommittees, which are the JCC executives on the board and past board chairs. And both groups are going to continue, has started to help us think carefully about the role of those cohorts in governance and leadership going forward. Just as a sidebar, at our last meeting a couple of weeks ago, Dolly Cooks also came to our meeting and really helped emphasize for us that we're on the right track here in terms of this task force and the work that we're hoping to do. So we can move to the next slide. So here's all the things that we've accomplished thus far in our 5 or 6 meetings that we've had over the summer. I'm not going to go through them, but I'm going to add, as part of the work, we really looked carefully at the size of the executive committee and what the optimal number would be for it to function well. So the goal is to make sure the committee is lean enough to work efficiently, but inclusive enough to reflect the right voices. So most importantly, we've been clear that the executive committee does not substitute for the full board, which remains the key governing body. And ultimately, all of these recommendations that that we're going to make, that we've already come up with, and the ones that are going to be on the next, and the things that we're going to address on the next slide, they're ultimately all going to come up to the full board for the adoption at the conclusion of this process, which we are pretty confident we'll be able to wrap up by the end of this year. And we can go to the last slide. So these are the key areas that we still want to work on. Finalizing committee structures and charges to align with the strategic and organizational priorities, defining officer and committee chair selection processes with clear expectations around accountability and partnership with the staff, populating those committees thoughtfully, not just matching members' skills and interests, but identifying, making sure that people rotate through so that they gain broad experience across the association, establishing a regular board self-evaluation process, something that needs to be a consistent practice of this board and is a consistent practice of all high-performing boards. And finally, oversight of a CEO performance assessment process that will reflect best practice and will help strengthen the lay professional partnership. As I said, we have an ambitious goal, but we think we can achieve it, and conclude our work by the end of this year so that we can enter 2026 with a governance structure that's ready to support the association's evolving strategic priorities and needs.
Thank you. And just one more thing before we kind of wrap up is just to say this has been a really fluid process. It has been responsive to the members of the committee. After our first meeting, we realized some things weren't working right, and we shifted the way we were doing things. We're really trying to live in the moment and be fluid. And we've had, with the extraordinary help of Brian Schreiber and bringing to us best practices and really helping keep us the train moving down the tracks. It's been a really, really great group and a great set of accomplishments. And we're looking forward to sharing where we reach to the end of the time in January when we come together.